Hi, I'm Nancy Radford. I'm a mediator, coach, and trainer. I train. Hi, I'm Nancy Radford. I'm a mediator, coach, and trainer. I train people to avoid conflict and to reduce the damage that conflict causes. As a mediator, my role is to help people who are in a conflict to try and resolve things. So why am I trying to make myself redundant as a mediator by giving you tips? It's because so often at the end of a successful mediation, people say, I wish we'd just had this conversation months, if not years ago. Or they say, I wish I'd learned those skills so long ago. So when MedIn2 asked me to do a series on this, I was delighted. So let's have a look at the final session in this series. The series is called Stop Arguing and Start Talking. It's everyday tips for conversations, not confrontations. Because when things aren't working for us, instead of fighting and struggling, we need to say, what's happening here? And as I said, this is the final session in the series, and it's called How to Make It Better If It Goes Wrong. Because conflict is part of life. Conflict starts when needs aren't met. And we need to understand that conflict can be good because it moves us to meet our needs, but we can reduce the damage and we can reduce how often it occurs. So this is about how to do that. The whole series is to help you understand human emotions and reactions, to show you ways of improving your relationships through better communication. The 5 sessions, all of which will be available on the MedIn2 app, are first, why we argue instead of talk, tools to change what we can, and that was the start of building up a toolkit for you. And then we looked at peace starting at home, because sometimes it's much harder to avoid conflict at home than it is at work. Then we looked at how you can make work easier by reducing conflict. And finally, in this session, we'll look how to put things right, because they will go wrong. It's just human nature. So in the previous sessions, we looked at how we instinctively react with anger or fear to change, the stories we tell ourselves and others that affect our emotions, and how we can manage those through understanding. And we've learned lots of tools so far. We learned the most crucial one, which is pausing to take control. And I'll cover that again in this session because it's so important. We talked about how changing our stories changes our lives. We found out how to reassure our fears and how to catch our anger and how to help others do the same. When we wonder whether to speak up or stay silent, the skim tools help us work this out. The sing tool helps us express opinions safely. And the luck helps us create constructive conversations. Listening is magic, and the magic tool reminds us how to do it well. We've learned how to speak so others listen. We've learned how to put conflict first aid into the workplace. And we've understood a bit more about helping others resolve conflict. What I'm going to cover today is about managing expectations and boundaries and why that's so important in avoiding and limiting the damage of conflict. We'll learn the simple tool for setting boundaries and managing expectations, the STAR tool when things don't go right and you're disappointed. When we're hurt, we'll learn about letting go of resentment and freeing ourselves so that we can move forward. And when we hurt others, how we apologize, The AARREE tool helps heal relationships, and we'll learn how to manage complaints so that we have less damage with them. So let's talk first about expectations. So in my mind, I want to make some icing. So I need some cream cheese. So I think, well, everybody knows that when I need cheese, it's cream cheese. So I say to my husband, oh, when you're in the shops, would you buy some cheese? And he goes, sure. And he's thinking, oh, I quite fancy some blue cheese. I'll buy that. So then he comes back and I'm cross because I can't make my icing. Blue cheese is no good for icing. And he's going, what's she cross about? She should have told me. And I'm thinking, but he should have known. He should have seen that I was making the icing. And that's a silly thing, but that's how conflict starts, because we say a word or we express an opinion of what we want, and then people don't give it to us. So instead of blaming the word we used, we blame the person for not understanding us. And this happens a bit with boundaries too. So say I'm talking to an employee and I want them to remember how important Mr. X is and that we have an important meeting with him at 10 o'clock. And I think, well, of course he knows that because it's such an important meeting and because Mr. X is so important, I want him to come a bit early so that we can prepare for our meeting at 10 o'clock. But all he hears is don't be late for our 10 o'clock meeting with Mr. X. So he says, sure, turns up at 10 o'clock. And then afterwards, I'm going, how could you be so blah, 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 blah. And that's how conflict starts, because we aren't clear with what we want and what we don't want. So let's look at a simple way, we call it the simple tool, for helping people understand what we want and what we don't want. So first we start with the story, the S of simple. What is important? What's an objective description of the situation? So let's start with that last one we did. We say, actually, Mr. X is coming for a 10 o'clock meeting tomorrow, and he's a really important customer, and I want to make sure we get it right. So the intent starts to come through the I. I really value your input, and I want to make sure that we're both talking to Mr. X along the same lines so that I don't promise something that you can't deliver. And then make your meaning clear. So I'd really like you to come for 9:30, because if you come at 10 o'clock, we won't have time to get our story straight and work out how we're going to handle problems or issues. And so please, can you come at 9:30? Do you understand why it's so important and what I want? So there's the pause, ask them and get their feedback. It might be, he says, well, actually, I'm not sure I can get there for 9:30 because my bus or something like that. And also, I only get paid for the meeting. So, that's an extra half hour that I could be earning money. So listening to that view with respect, and then you answer clearly, well, it's really important and I'm prepared to pay you for that half hour. If you can't make it, so then you start the end, be clear about the options and consequences. If you can't make it, please tell me now so that I can, get someone else in. Or maybe it's an option that we have a meeting now and we sort it out, but you need to be here for at least 1:45 so that we can get the room straight and you're not rushing in at the last minute, because I really want this to go well and I know that we can do it. So that's your simple tool, starting with the story, the intent, the meaning, pausing, listening, and ending it so that it's all very clear what you want. So if people don't do what you want, you need to remember star. No? So when your expectations aren't met, or when people cross the boundary, the S stands for safety. Don't start with blame. Start with the situation. Start with something you both agree on. We both agreed that it was important to make sure we were speaking the same with Mr. X. And I know it will make things better if we get this resolved, because we don't want it to happen again, because then I get irritated, you get flustered. Talk tentatively. Say, why was it? Because I thought I was clear that I wanted you to come early. Was there something that, you didn't understand, or what was the problem? Because what that meant when you came at 10 o'clock was that I was starting to get quite anxious and agitated. And that meant that I wasn't as clear with Mr. X, and I wasn't nervous. Choose when you have this conversation. Don't have the conversation in public or when you're both stressed out. Take control of your emotions. And then the A stands for assessing the situation. How important is it? What can you do moving forward? And ask for their opinion. And then assess again and accept that perhaps you've got it wrong, or perhaps we need to do something different in the future. Be realistic about what is achievable and what is not achievable. Resolve the situation and record what you have agreed. So being a star, being safe, being talking about things, choosing your timing, assess, and ask, and listen, and be realistic. Make sure that the understanding is there. So when we're hurt, how do we move on? What can we do to help ourselves? One of the things that we often do is we don't find it very hard to let go. And why is letting go so important? Well, let me tell you a little story that might help you understand why letting go is good. Let's imagine a man walks into a bar with all sorts of arrows and swords stuck into him. And the barman goes, "Oh my goodness, you look like you're in a lot of pain." "Yes, I am. It's terrible. Mr. X has shot me full of arrows and stabbed me, and it's terrible." And the barman says, "Oh, let me get you a doctor. Let me help you." And the man says, No. Mr. X has got to do it because Mr. X put those arrows in. Mr. X has got to take those arrows out. Now we suddenly see why it's so silly to expect the person who's injured you to put it right, to suffer that pain that you don't need to suffer by waiting on them. It's giving them the control. So why not reduce the pain, take back control, and free your mind? Because if you hold on to anger, it's like grasping a hot coal with the intent to throw it at someone. You're the one getting burned. Revenge is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Resentment eats away at you. It does no good. So how do you move on? What can we do to move on from resentment and anger? So how to heal and let go is to acknowledge your own pain. That's fine, but don't get stuck there. There are different things you can do to acknowledge the pain. Sometimes writing everything out, all the anger, all the frustration, all the sorrow, and then looking at it and saying, do I really want to carry this around with me? Yes, I'm feeling it, and yes, I was perfectly justified. But am I going to hang on to it, or am I going to burn it? Am I going to throw it away, rip it up, tear it up, burn it, get rid of it? And then assess, What do I need to heal? Give yourself some time. Assess, what is it? Do I need friendship? Do I need consolation? Do I just need time and space? And then accept that the other person and the situation may not change. Because if you don't accept that, you will always be hanging on, waiting for them. Take back that control by accepting the situation as it is now and looking what you can do to change. Maybe the only thing you can do to change is to change your attitude. But maybe you can do other things. Maybe you can satisfy those needs without involving the other person. Maybe you can distract yourself. Maybe you can find some good in it. So, how do we actually move on and free ourselves from past injuries? So, here's a little thing for you, free. Yep. Notice what happened and describe your feelings to yourself, because describing your feelings actually makes you able to take control of them and helps you reconnect that logical brain, that breathing, that soothing, that reassuring yourself. And then recognize what it is you need to be free of this pain. Accepting that and accepting the solution, the situation. Recognize what you can and cannot do. And then explore how you can meet your needs without the other person. If you need money to make things right, yes, you could sue them. Or you could also say, actually, I'm just going to not go on worrying about that. I'm going to focus on earning money instead of spending time suing them. And then enable yourself. Take action. It might just be distraction, but also think about how you can avoid getting into this situation in the future. Think about the steps you can take to protect yourself, to heal yourself. So freeing yourself means looking at your feelings, recognizing where you are, exploring what you need and how long it might take, and planning and enabling yourself to take action. What about when we hurt others, though? How do we restore relationships? Well, we need to remember that relationships are like a rope. They're built up of many, many fibers. And like a rope, they can be cut with a single slash. And like a rope, it takes a long time to rebuild and rewind those fibers. And if you're careful and take the time, it could make the rope stronger. But it could also be impossible to repair. So remember that things take time. And so when you apologize for hurting others, you need to appreciate that they may not accept your apology. And the apology needs, like a bandage, to be bigger than the wound. So even if it seems a small thing to you, an apology, and you think, I don't see why I have to apologize, I didn't mean to say it, that won't heal. Don't say, oh, I'm sorry if I made you angry. In other words, you're a bit silly to get angry about it. All that does is trivialize somebody else's feelings. So what you need to do is talk about what you value, how sad you feel that the other person is hurt, how much you would like to repair things, and asking them for what they need, putting their needs first, trying to understand them, makes for a really genuine apology. Because when we want people to, when we're hurt, we want people to understand why we're hurt. We want them to acknowledge we had the right to be hurt. And we want them to help us to heal and we want them to show that they're sorry. So you need to act, not just talk. Real apologies include some actions and consistency in the future. But what if apology doesn't work? What can we do? So it may be something so big that the first apology doesn't work and they keep being negative. How do we handle that? Here's some great tips from John Sturrock, a mediator, and I've found this has been very helpful, particularly when the pain has been some time ago and the people have been it's been eating away at them. So if they're angry and frustrated and negative with you, this is how to handle it. Don't try and explain your viewpoint first, because they won't be able to listen. So what you do is you acknowledge their feelings, accept that they have the right to those feelings and that that's their view, even if for you it seems a silly thing. Accept that to them it was big and recognize the impact and the pain that they've suffered. Reassure them that you care about their pain. Reassure them that you will do what you can to ease that pain and that you do want to help. And then explore with them what's going on. What do they need? What could you do that could help? This exploration and reassurance, you may need to sort of go round it several times. And yes, you want to explain your viewpoint, but don't do that until you've understood theirs, until you really understand the first few bits of it, because they won't be able to listen otherwise. And this is a really, really effective tool. What about if you get complaints, especially from customers or from clients? Salad is a great, healthy way of handling complaints so that they can turn into compliments. And I know it sounds funny, but it really does work, because I used to have a print business, and when we had complaints, I used this tool and I taught it to my staff. It works so well. But just like salad, if you leave a complaint sitting about for a while, it goes stale. It isn't nice, and you just don't want to eat it. So handle complaints quickly but thoughtfully. So let's think of SALAD. Okay, S is for switching your thinking back on, right? Remember that pause tool. Breathe in and out. A couple of times that will switch your thinking back on. It switches off your anger and your fear. And you don't want to handle a complaint when you're not thinking straight, because you'll make it worse. And apologize. Apologizing doesn't always mean you're wrong and the other person's right. It means you value the relationship more than your ego. So think about what you're sorry for. You're sorry that you did something that upset them, and you're sorry they feel bad. Even if you didn't mean to upset them, you're still sorry they're upset. So then what can you do? You can listen. And I know it's hard to listen when people are telling you things that are hard to hear, especially if they're saying it's your fault when it isn't. But if you don't listen, they will get madder and madder. Really explore what's going on for them. When they draw a breath, don't jump in. Just say, tell me more about what that meant for you. Don't trivialize. Don't make excuses. Don't try and give reasons. Don't even jump in with advice or solutions. Just listen. What people want when they complain is to be heard and for you to understand the impact and difficulty they're having. And the most important thing is that they're understood, because if we listen and understand them, they'll suffer less. And people will forget what you've said. People will even forget what you do, but people will always remember how you made them feel. And if you want to make someone feel valued and understood, Listening is absolutely key. So when they stop, instead of saying, I think we should, ask them for their solution. Don't offer anything. And that's what people tend to do. Oh, we'll give you a money off voucher. And they think, well, I never want to come to this restaurant again. So ask them for their solution. What they may say, they may ask for a money off voucher, but they may say, I just wanted you to know how upsetting it was. And there's nothing you can do. But I just wanted you to understand how that ruined my day. Yeah. Or they may say, yes, well, that would be great. And I really appreciate you taking this so seriously. So ask them for their solution and seriously consider whether you can do it. And then do what you can. Try and do more than what they ask for. Because like we talked about an apology has to be bigger than the wound. So as soon as people start to heal, as soon as people start to heal the moment they feel heard. So do what you can. You may not be able to do anything, but be honest about it. Be clear what you can and can't do, and show them that you care. And if you follow this salad method, you will find that compliments turn into compliments and people start backing down. So today, we talked about managing expectations and boundaries. We had the simple tool for setting boundaries and telling people what your expectations are. We had the STAR tool for when things don't go right. And when we're hurt, we learned why it's so important to let go of resentment and how to free ourselves from resentment. When we hurt others, we need to think about how we apologize. We need to realize that we may have to handle their negativity even when we don't feel it's justified. And the salad tool for managing complaints is very, very useful and reinforces the importance of listening. So thank you for your attention. And if you found this talk useful, be sure to watch any of the other sessions you've missed, or watch the sessions again to learn the tools. If you want one-to-one sessions with me to help you manage conflict, you can book these on the Med-Into app. And if you think training for your employees or yourself would be useful, you can also find out more about this on the Med-Into app. So thank you so much for your attention, and I really hope that it's helped you. Bye.